Chris, involved in so many different community organizations that I can't go through all of them in the interest of time. My dear friend, Judge Allen, if you could come up, I'd like to present you with our award. Judge Allen, the podium is yours. Thank you.
All right. So, you know, I do a fair amount of public speaking, and usually I don't get nervous about doing public speaking, but listening to my friend Mike talk about me, I noticed that there are little beads of perspiration starting to develop, and I wasn't really sure if he was talking about me or somebody that just shared my name. So I guess he was talking about me since I have the podium now. But God, I feel uncomfortable all of a sudden. But this is beautiful. This is wonderful, and thank you so very much for this honor. As a matter of fact, I would just like to thank you guys, just generally speaking, because I didn't actually know a whole lot about what you guys do in terms of professionalism, but you know, being the dutiful student that I am, once I learned that I had been selected for the award, I actually went on the internet, of course, to start to download some information about what was going on, and I found out, much to my amazement, much to my surprise, that this incredible jewel was right beneath my nose, and I never knew that Cooley Law School, Western Michigan University Law School, I should add, I don't want to say the wrong thing, be politically incorrect, actually is a very, very strong proponent of professionalism and ethics. As a matter of fact, when I started doing the research on the internet, it actually led me to look at the website for the American Bar Association. And when I did that, I saw some of the comments that were made by the ABA about Cooley Law School. And I'd just like to share a little bit of that with you. So as I was looking at the ABA, it was the Center for Public Service and Professionalism. And they said about Cooley, that Cooley is awash, that was their word, awash, with programs that are designed to take students from orientation to graduation with the stated goal of making sure that there was a focus on professionalism and ethics. Now, I went to law school a long time ago, and we weren't steeped in ethics and professionalism. We had one class. There was no orientation to professional ethics that carried us from orientation to graduation. So it was amazing to me that I saw that about your school. Not only did I see that, I also saw that you had actually been recognized nationally by the ABA with the E. Smythe Gambrell Award in 2006. And for those of you who don't know who Mr. Gambrell is, he was president of the ABA, and he was president of the ABA Foundation way back in the day, so this was a prestigious award that you guys got. So I actually applaud you guys for all of your history. Give it up for yourself, because that was a very, very important attribute. And I also appreciate you guys bestowing this award to me, because when I saw all of this rich history, this rich lineage that you guys have, and then to see that I was being recognized and being given this award by this school, that actually made the award mean that much more to me. So I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to have the award. I would be remiss, and I know that I'm taking a little bit of license with the microphone, but I would be remiss if I didn't say a thank you to a very special person. And that very special person is to my left, to your right. She's the lovely Deborah Allen, my wife. As I said before, I give lots and lots of speeches. So that means that I'm always somewhere writing little notes about speeches that I'm going to give. And My long-suffering wife just puts up with it. She says I should get paid, and I'm starting to agree with her. But in any event, I always want to make sure that I give her a shout out because I love you, honey. So, and I also have to give a little shout out to my friend, General McDaniel. General McDaniels is a longtime friend of mine, as he indicated earlier. And we did work together at the Attorney General's office. I actually just recently ran into him as I was coming back from Hollywood. That's
I wasn't in Hollywood.
that pregnant pause was intentional, by the way. Because it wasn't Hollywood, California, it's Hollywood, Florida. I have a face for radio, not for Hollywood. But in all seriousness, one of the things that I wanted to say publicly that I don't think that I've ever said to my friend Mike McDaniel is that I've always watched his career from far and marveled at the things that he has done. And a couple things that I'll point out is when he helped the city of Lansing as it was recovering from the ice storm and the work that he did on behalf of BWL, and how he then went over to help the city of Flint as it was dealing with that egregious situation with its drinkable water. And so I've always marveled at the fact, we were all public servants, and I'm a marvel at the fact that he continues to work on behalf of the public. I mean, when I knew Mike, he hadn't even gone to become a general. He was studying War College, and he was raising a family, and he was doing all of this juggling. And he has a lovely wife too, just as lovely as mine. But I think that General McDaniels deserves a round of applause. Tremendous work on behalf of the state, tremendous work on behalf of the nation through Homeland Security, and he just continues to keep plugging along, and now he's an educator of the next generation of folks that will lead our country. So what I really would like to discuss is the topic of integrity at this moment in time. I believe very firmly, as probably many of you, that public trust appears to be at a tipping point. You know, law is considered to be one of the learned professions along with professions like medicine. And it's an honored and noble profession. And it's really interesting from the perspective that it allows for people to actually be in a position to earn a living by helping other people. But in doing so, we have to have the trust of the public in order to do that. So it carries with it not only that privilege, but the enormous responsibility to be a person of high integrity and high moral fiber and ethical as it relates to what it is that you do. So I was trying to be a little bit cute as I was getting ready to prepare my remarks to kind of try and make it a little bit on the interesting side, because you know, lawyers, when they get a microphone, they just sound like, you ever see Charlie Brown cartoons and when they dogs are talking, they go, wah, 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 wah. I don't want to do that. I want people to have a good time and to enjoy the comments, but so as I was preparing it and trying to think of some way to be sort of entertaining, I came up with this topic, and the topic was integrity, a modest proposal. Hopefully, getting people to want to think about, well, what's he talking about, a modest proposal? So I have a question for you guys in the audience. Does anyone know who Jonathan Swift is? Anybody? I see just one hand. I think I see two. I was actually hoping to get one of the students. None of the students know who Jonathan Swift is? Jonathan Swift is a person that in 1729 penned a proposal, which he called a modest proposal. And I think you need to kind of understand the background of what was going on at that time. What was going on was there was pestilence, there was poverty, there was a lack of food and famine. And Jonathan Swift was a clerk, St. Patrick's Cathedral, but he was also a satirist. And he penned what he called a modest proposal for preventing the children of the poor from being a burden to their parents or to their country. His proposal was pretty outlandish. His proposal was to sell the children as food for the rich gentlemen and ladies, because they were the persons of means that still needed to eat, and these kids were just a burden to their parents because the parents didn't have the ability to feed them. But again, he was a satirist. So it wasn't serious, folks. You guys are all looking like it was serious. It was not serious, okay? So I just use that as sort of a hook, because I think that what I am actually going to propose is relatively modest. We won't eat any children. Promise. But one of the things that I did want to talk about, sort of getting back to the sort of serious side of the issue, is that as attorneys, we have long sort of suffered in the public's eye as to what our ilk actually does or is about. As a matter of fact, I think it was Shakespeare, Henry VI. First, let's kill all the lawyers. Remember that? Again, I think satirical, but that sort of mindset sort of existed with regard to, well, these lawyers are actually sort of ingrained in our society. Now we sort of think about lawyers as sort of social architects. But back in those times, I mean, you could sort of make a case that maybe the lawyers were part of the problem, but I don't think that that was Shakespeare's point. I think that was just one of the ways to sort of grab attention, but it's one of those things that has survived since the time of Shakespeare that makes you think about, well, wow, why have attorneys have sort of suffered in the public's consciousness for so long? As a matter of fact, attorneys have been referred to as shysters, ambulance chasers. They have been prohibited from advertising until recent times. They were accused of working only for the benefit of the folks that have money, and they were considered to have an absence of integrity because they could find a loophole if the money was big enough for you to pay them to find that loophole. So let me try another question, and maybe I can call on one of the students for an answer to this question. This is sort of a quote. A good lawyer knows the law, a great lawyer knows the judge. Good lawyer knows the law, a great lawyer knows the judge. Let's just focus on that second clause. A great lawyer knows the judge. What does that actually mean? Any student? Now don't forget, I am a judge and I will call you. So it's better to volunteer. Yes, ma'am.
It means to know the audience that you're in front of. So even if you know what case you're bringing the arguments, you have to be able to communicate that to the person that's in front of you so they can understand it.
But probably guaranteed, and that's precisely what that means. But probably guaranteed, 9 out of 10 times if you ask a member of the public, if you ask a member of the public, that's going to mean to them that there's some coziness with the judge, as opposed to this being a situation where there is nothing untoward happening. If you use that quote, you can use it on family members or friends and see what their response is. That pretty much guaranteed 90% of the time they're going to believe that there was something untoward happening. But a great lawyer would know the proclivities of his audience, of that judge, because that makes a difference how you fashion your argument. It doesn't mean that you play golf or bridge or that you go to lunch with that person. But in the minds of the public, I think that that's what it does mean. So in any event, I'd like to sort of move on to what I consider to be sort of a troubling trend that I see developing. And the trend is basically sort of to delegitimize some of the institutions in our society that we have come to rely on. We've gotten to the point, and I'm wondering if I was, still raising children, what my position would be with respect to this. But you have to start to ask yourself the question whether truth actually matters when people can promote alternative facts as if they are the truth. Does truth actually matter? Can you just say and do anything and there are no consequences? Is it really ethical and professional to do something along those lines? There was a statement made not too long ago, and I'm sure that you folks have probably come across this statement about the press being an enemy of the people as opposed to an essential element of our democracy. Think about that. So if you cannot rely on the statements that are being made, what do you rely on? When I was a kid, and maybe this is just a function of where I grew up, we had an expression, your word is your bond. And a lot of times people were so poor, that's all they had was their word, their good name to rely on. But if truth doesn't matter, where does that actually leave us? Where does that leave us? Chris Wallace, who is a commentator, actually I guess he's more of a journalist for Fox News, he was really, really upset. And I was on the internet and I came across a statement that he made, and I just like to talk to you a little bit about that. In response to the notion that the press was the enemy of the people, he said, that crosses a line. That crosses a line, and he felt the need to speak out against it. He said a free and independent press is necessary in a free society, and as part of the fabric of our free society, and democracy requires that. So truth has to matter. We can't have fake news. But it's not actually limited to the news gathering process that you see this trend. It even applies to the intelligence community. When I'm speaking of the FBI and the CIA, and I was raised in an era of time where we had our conspiracy theories. And so it's not like I believe wholesale everything that is fed to me, but you refer to those people as Nazis. Concerning. These are people that are supposedly dedicated to providing information intelligence so that our leaders can have information on which to act on behalf of the nation. But if truth doesn't matter, if people are just acting outside of the scope of what their undertakings are, where does that actually lead us as a nation? Judiciary is actually also part of this troubling trend. Federal Judge Gonzalo Curio, he is the judge that was assigned to the Trump University case. He happened to be of Mexican heritage, and it was decided that he could not appropriately decide cases because he was pro-Mexico. The decision with regard to the initial immigration ban, Federal Judge James Robart was said to be a so-called judge. Again, but you could not rely on what he was doing because he was just a so-called judge. He wasn't actually a real judge. What the circuit judges said actually came out and affirmed the decision that he reached. He said that those judges were acting politically as opposed to fulfilling their obligation under Article 3 of the Constitution as Article 3 jurors. And I bring up Article 3, I think it's Section 2 if I'm correct. If I'm not mistaken about that, it's Section 2 basically says that judges, federal judges, are given lifetime appointments with no diminution of salary to make sure that they resided above the political fray, so that they were decidedly not going to be political in terms of how they approach their job. This actually reminds me of the seminal case of Marbury versus Madison, which define the boundary between the constitutionally separate executive and judicial branches of government. In Marbury, the Supreme Court famously said, "It is the job of the judiciary to say what the law is, not with respect to whatever political alliances may exist, but the simple function of saying what the law is." So let's go back to public trust. Public trust is impacted by perception. Perceptions are framed based on whether or not people actually believe them. And the stronger a person believes in a perception, the more it becomes a reality. Even if it's not true, that perception becomes reality if it's strongly held. The current tide of distrust questions the integrity of all of us, and we have to be concerned as members of this society. One of the things that I think that you'll believe is true, because I think it's inescapable, is that our society tends to look at people in blocks or in groups. And so if there is a problem with a member of a particular group, and I'm talking about the legal profession, then we're all sort of painted with that same broad brush as far as the public is concerned. Why do I bring that up? Because I believe that when you start to have situations where there's delegitimization of the folks in our society, whether you're talking about journalists or you're talking about lawyers and judges, that when you start to look at painting that group of people with that broad brush, that injures everyone within that group of people. So we all have to be sort of concerned about the delegitimization of what is going on in our society. Because we don't need to sort of be looked at with scorn by proxy. If people can't believe what a lawyer tells them, then the lawyer's advice and counsel means nothing. That sets up an untenable paradigm. So what do you make of these times that we're living in? One of the interesting things about you guys as students at Cooley Law School is that in the past, the students have created their own sort of list of values and own codes of conduct that incorporates their values to guide everyday life. The idea was to be prepared to be able to respond ethically to challenges, whether they were personal or professional. One question that comes to my mind is whether we're living in sort of a time of sea change, or whether this is just sort of an important time that we live in. I think that only history will be the final arbiter of whether this is, whether we're in the midst of a crisis or simply a very important time. There's a Republican senator out of Nebraska by the name of Ben Sasse, and he has an interesting quote. He says, "We're seeing a civilization warping crisis of public trust." Remind me of a quote from John F. Kennedy, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. He said, "When written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger, and the other one represents opportunity." Danger or opportunity? I choose to believe that this is an opportunity for us to actually refocus and emphasize the integrity of the legal profession. This is actually my modest proposal, that we actually get refocused, recommitted, understand that things are sort of upside down, and that we all have a role to play because we're all interconnected in terms of how we're viewed as a group of people. So it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we do what we can on behalf of ourselves, to save ourselves. First and foremost, the rules of professional conduct require that you act with a high degree of fidelity. Even for judges, there's canon 2 that says that a judge is supposed to, at all times, conduct themselves in a manner to promote public confidence, of the integrity and impartiality of the judiciary. So, I'm starting to actually get a little bit, this is getting a little bit heavy, and I see guys sort of like, you know, I'm getting stressed a little bit here, and I don't want you to be stressed, I want you to be uplifted and happy about our time together. So, my proposal is, again, we're not gonna eat the kids, okay? A little bit of nervous laughter, that's good, okay? But I do again say that this is a time for us to remember that our actions are important. Our actions actually speak louder than words.